there, wake up. It's Means Morning News. Just after 11 a.m. on the East Coast here in Washington, D.C., I'm the newsman, Sam Sachs. We made it to the Friday show. Good morning to everyone, especially Congressman George Santos and the OnlyFans models that George Santos spent Republican campaign donations on. Yeah, his days as a member of Congress might be numbered, but his legacy will live on forever. Thanks for the memories, George. That is your real name. And we begin on the West Coast, where protesters calling for a ceasefire in Gaza shut down one of the main traffic arteries into San Francisco. During morning rush hour on Thursday, dozens of activists drove their cars to the midway point on the Bay Bridge, which connects Oakland to San Francisco. They then parked their vehicles, got out, threw their keys into the water, and then chained themselves together to block all traffic. By the time police were able to make it to the scene, separate the activists, arrest about 80 of them, and tow all the cars, traffic on Interstate 80 was stalled for more than 4 hours. Mass demonstrations are taking place on a daily basis in the U.S. in response to the government's support for the Israeli military's ethnic cleansing campaign in Gaza. Protesters shut down the federal building in Oakland earlier this week, and here in Washington, Jewish groups calling for peace disrupted meetings at the Democratic National Committee headquarters, which then led to a police riot. Israel is now conducting its campaign in Gaza in violation of a UN Security Council resolution. The international body took its first action on the conflict, passing a measure this week calling for a days-long pause in the bombing to allow humanitarian aid to reach Palestinians who've been under siege for more than a month. It passed 12-0, with the US, Russia, and the UK abstaining in the vote. But the bombs continue to fall in Gaza. More airstrikes hit the Jabalia refugee camp overnight, killing an estimated 18 civilians. There were also more Israeli strikes against residential areas in Khan Yunis, in southern Gaza, where people from northern Gaza were told to evacuate to. Prior concerns that the Israeli army wouldn't stop its campaign in the north and would continue southward to drive Palestinians into the desert are proving valid. The IDF is now dropping leaflets across southern Gaza, just as it did across northern Gaza, telling people to evacuate. And members of Benjamin Netanyahu's war cabinet told Israeli outlet Walla that they support expanding the ground war to the south. This is from Al Jazeera, quote, "According to the source, there is unanimity between Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, Minister Benny Gantz, and the Israeli Army's former Chief of Staff, Gadi Eisenkot, to push ahead with military operations regardless of ongoing talks on a deal to release captives." And so the protests stateside and around the world will continue and must continue until support for the killing stops. Union workers at the big three automakers have ratified their new labor contract, negotiated after several weeks of striking. Roughly 2/3 of UAW members at Ford and Stellantis voted to approve the tentative agreement, which includes significant pay increases, boosts to benefits, and the elimination of tiered employment. At General Motors, the vote was a bit closer, with around 55% of workers supporting the agreement, a sign that class consciousness is growing among rank-and-file members at a pace even quicker than their union leadership. The workers' strike victory is also paying dividends for employees at non-union automakers in the U.S. Hoping to avoid labor unrest, Toyota announced it would raise wages by more than 9%. Honda is boosting pay by 11% beginning next year, and Hyundai said it will give workers in Alabama and Georgia a 25% raise over the next 4 years. Subaru announced on Thursday that it too will give workers a pay increase. These are steady gains in the class war, But the only way to preserve them is to actually unionize all auto workers. Without a labor contract, companies can take away that increased pay just as quickly as they offered it. Okay, this next story goes out to all the comrades who are stealing in the self-checkout line at the grocery store. Keep doing it. It's working. British supermarket Booths just announced it's getting rid of its automated checkout lanes in nearly all of its stores. And as The Atlantic detailed last month, major retailers in the US are doing the same thing. Quote, all is not rosy in the world of self-checkout, and some companies seem to realize it. Walmart has removed the kiosks entirely from a handful of stores and is redesigning others to involve more employee help. Costco is stationing more staffers in its self-checkout areas. ShopRite is adding cashiers back into stores where it had trialed a self-checkout only model, citing customer backlash. Now, at first, these machines were installed so that companies could save on labor costs. Why pay salary and benefits for a cashier and bagger when you could just make the customer do it for free, right? Well, that's in theory. In practice, the machines often break and people don't know how to use them, so you still need humans to watch over the process. Either intentionally or not, people sometimes forget to ring up an item, or they ring up the wrong one. By accident, of course. I hear it happens a lot with bananas in place of steak. Retailers refer to all this as shrink, and according to research out of Europe that looked at markets both there and in the States, stores with automated registers have 4% shrink. That's double the average. And that's all due to you, the troops out there taking liberties at self-checkout. Keep up the good work by showing these retailers that busting up labor power comes at a steep price. I regret to inform you all that the ruling class is once again freaking out about TikTok. Yes, TikTok, the popular video app adored by Zoomers. Conservatives have long despised the platform because they think it's a Chinese influence operation and because Zoomer communists post good videos on it that are critical of capitalist orthodoxy in U.S. foreign policy. On the other side, liberals hate it because they think it's a Chinese influence operation and because Zoomer communists post good videos on it that are critical of capitalist orthodoxy in U.S. foreign policy. The two sides came together on Thursday after a couple dozen users on TikTok posted videos about reading Osama bin Laden's letter to America. This is the document written more than 20 years ago in which bin Laden laid out his justification for doing 9/11. And what shocked most of the young people who posted about it was how much it undermined what they were taught in schools. That bin Laden attacked us because he hated freedom or something. They realized is bin Laden had specific grievances about U.S. foreign policy. Some quite legitimate. A lot of it not at all legitimate, though. There's anti-Semitic and homophobic garbage in that letter, and bin Laden's ultimate conclusion that thousands of civilians are legitimate targets for murder because of their government is abhorrent. In other words, you do not have to hand it to Osama bin Laden. And really, most of the people who are posting about the letter on TikTok were not handing it to him, simply noting how the attacks were blowback, which is a pretty common takeaway, especially for those of us who lived through 9/11 and actually examined how U.S. foreign policy created the conditions for it. Many of the people who posted on TikTok about the letter weren't alive or were too young to remember 9/11 and thus never participated in that discourse and are now for the first time.
I am ashamed to say that I not only have never read this letter, but I didn't even know this letter existed. It's wild, and everyone should read it. If you haven't read it yet, read it. However, be forewarned that this has left me very disillusioned, and I feel the same exact way I felt when I was deconstructing Christianity. I feel a little bit just confused, like I have entered into another timeline. What is this?
Now, here's the important context to all of this. TikTok has over 1 billion users worldwide. It's got over 150 million users just in the United States. And as the Washington Post reported, this controversy was generated by only a couple dozen users posting videos about the letter. A couple dozen out of 150 million users. Those couple dozen videos were seen by more than 2 million people, which might seem like a lot, but isn't really on an app like TikTok where people just mindlessly absorb hours of video every day. And as the Post noted, videos about travel racked up 137 million daily views. TikToks about skincare more than 250 million views. Anime videos had over 600 million views. So the Bin Laden letter was a blip on TikTok. That was until Yashir Ali posted a thread about it on Twitter that went viral with 28 million views, more than the Bin Laden videos were getting on TikTok. That Twitter thread kicked off the controversy, news outlets picked up the story, and we were off to the races with people melting down.
Here is something many of us did not see coming. Osama bin Laden, the late al-Qaeda terrorist leader who orchestrated the 9/11 attacks, his words are going viral on TikTok. I'm not joking. This is true.
It is not a coincidence that we woke up this morning to a letter from Osama bin Laden going viral on TikTok as he was lauded. This is a jihadist, hateful, despicable human being being lauded.
We have to start with the 9/11 thing. It's just too much for me. Anyone who lived through 9/11 is recoiling in horror at what these young people are saying. They've been indoctrinated. Their minds have been twisted. They've been brainwashed. They're weak. They're weak, pathetic souls. And I just posted on Twitter a minute ago to their parents, you failed. You failed them and you failed us.
Doesn't Megyn Kelly have more important things to worry about? Like depictions of Santa Claus as black? Also, Jake Tapper getting indignant about the content on TikTok while he and others at his network parrot IDF lies 24/7 in order to justify a genocide in Gaza? That's particularly gross. After more news outlets caught wind of what was happening at TikTok, the Guardian newspaper, which is where people were reading the letter from, immediately removed the document from its website. But that only generated more interest in it, so more people started making and sharing Bin Laden letter videos. But still, a relatively small amount on TikTok. At most, a couple hundred accounts that generated about 15 million views. This is what's known as the Streisand effect, when the attempt to suppress information leads to more people trying to seek it out than would have before it was censored. And yes, it's named after America's treasured singer and actress, Barbra Streisand. You can Google it if you want to learn why. The media freakout did pressure TikTok to start deleting videos that were posted about the Bin Laden letter, which will probably end up generating even more interest in the letter. All of this proves that what's far more dangerous than young people talking about Bin Laden on TikTok is boomers and lanyard millennials hearing about it too. The kids are going to be all right. The rest of us, not so sure. To quote the new metal band Stained, it's been a while, but we're back with a brand new Rich Dix. Thanks to everyone who submitted nominations on social media. Arona getting very specific with their nod, not just all the damn landlords, but one guy specifically, their landlord, Jonathan S. Perrell, owner of GSC, the largest evictor in Richmond, Virginia. Jonathan, you've been put on notice. Got a nomination here for Justice Clarence Thomas and the rest of the Supreme Court, who think that a non-binding code of ethics will satisfy us and make us forget about how damn corrupt the institution is. Well, it won't. Starbucks CEO Laxman Narasimhan nominated for picking up where Howard Schultz left off and refusing to negotiate with his workers' union. Why baristas had to go on strike this week. And here's a nomination for Joe Biden and Antony Blinken for their continued support for the genocide in Gaza. Very strong contenders. Thank you, everyone. But this week's Rich Dick is United States Senator Markwayne Mullen. Big tough millionaire walking around trying to fight everyone. On so many levels, Markwayne is the quintessential Rich Dick. And this goes beyond his beef with Teamsters President Sean O'Brien, which exploded again this week in a hearing when Mullen, for the second time, threatened to physically fight the union leader.
Pretends like he's self-made. What a clown. Fraud. Always has been, always will be. Quit the tough guy act in these Senate hearings. You know where to find me. Any place, anytime, cowboy. Sir, this is a time, this is a place. If you want to run your mouth, we can be two consenting adults. We can finish it here.
Okay, that's fine. Perfect.
You want to do it now?
I'd love to do it right now.
Well, stand your butt up then.
You stand your butt up.
Oh, hold on.
Big guy.
Oh, stop it.
Is that your solution every poll?
No, sit down.
Eric,
Sit down. Okay. You're a United States Senator. Sit down.
Active.
Oh, okay.
Mullen there relying on an 80-year-old man to be the hold me back, bro. Pathetic. The senator is a trained MMA fighter, though, which is why he thinks he can get away with acting like a bully. All of this dates back to when the Teamsters tried to unionize Mullen's plumbing company. During a hearing back in March, Mullen used that history to attack O'Brien for not creating jobs like he did. And then things spiraled from there.
And back in 2009, you guys tried to unionize me. My guys were making money. They were getting paid more than the union halls were paying their plumbers. Our benefits were better. But because we started bidding jobs that were union jobs and winning those, union pipe fitters decided they were going to come after us. They would show up at my house. They'd be leaning up against my trucks. I'm not afraid of a physical confrontation. In fact, sometimes I look forward to it. Sir, you haven't created a job.
We haven't?
You haven't been there. You haven't.
Sure we have.
You haven't.
Sure we have.
Tell me one job that you created.
What are you talking about? Be specific.
You're
Like,
an
what do you mean?
employer?
No, we're not
You
an
employ
employer.
people?
No, but it's funny.
So, no, then hold on. Then
we
that's
create
not creating
opportunity.
jobs.
We create opportunity because we
Sir,
hold
that's
we
not-
hold greedy CEOs
That's
like yourself
not-
accountable.
You call me a greedy CEO?
Oh yeah, you
There
are.
it is.
You want to attack my salary? I'll attack yours. What
go
did you
ahead.
make? What did you make when you owned your company?
When I made my company, I kept my salary down at about $50,000 a year because I invested every penny into it.
Okay, all right. You mean you hid money?
No, I didn't hide. Oh, hold on a second.
That's another classic Rich Dick move there. Lying about how rich you are. Mullen's claim that he only took a $50,000 salary? It's bullshit. Business Insider looked at his disclosures and found that he actually paid himself $92,000 in salary that year, so almost twice as much as he claimed. But like all business owners, they get their income in other ways too. Quote, Mullen reported between $200,000 and $2 million in income in 2012 from two family companies, Mullen Plumbing Inc. and Mullen Plumbing West, and another $15,000 to $50,000 from shares he held in a bank. In 2011, Mullen also made well over $50,000. His salary was over $77,000, and his other income from the same two businesses was also over $200,000. And he also reported over $50,000 in rent that year from Mullen Properties. Oh, so he's a fucking landlord too. I wonder if he's threatened to beat up any of his tenants. Mullen did once threaten to fight the U.S. ambassador to Tajikistan, though, because he wouldn't let the senator cosplay as Rambo in Afghanistan. The Washington Post reported on this bizarre story and a call placed to the ambassador's office amid the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan. Quote, on the line, two U.S. officials said, was Rep. Markwayne Mullen with an unusual and urgent request. He needed assistance in transporting a huge amount of cash into the country, saying he was going to neighboring Afghanistan to rescue 5 American citizens, a woman and her 4 children stuck in the country. They plan to hire a helicopter for the effort. Naturally, the embassy said no, it couldn't help Mullen break the law in Tajikistan and also wouldn't help him sneak into one of the most dangerous places on earth. Kind of a bummer to think we might not have had to keep dealing with this guy if only the State Department just let him go. Sure, dude, fly that helicopter into Afghanistan, a place not at all known for its prowess in shooting down helicopters. The Post reported on Mullen's reaction, quote, Mullen was outraged by the response, the official said, threatening U.S. Ambassador John Mark Pommersheim and embassy staff and demanding to know the name of staff members he was speaking with. You can just imagine it, this nut screaming into a phone at a bunch of State Department paper pushers that he's going to fly to Tajikistan to kick their asses. Mullen ready to throw down at all times, except that one time when he was actually needed, on January 6th, when he and his colleagues were besieged by a mob of former cops and car dealership owners. This is what Mullen was doing, cowering in fear in the Senate chamber. What's up with that, tough guy? Senator Mark Wayne Mullen, you are this week's Rich Dick. He's probably going to try to fight me now, isn't he? All right, friends, the show ends this morning with a sunrise from Pennsylvania. It was sent in by our old friend and correspondent, Teddy, as she was departing Philadelphia International Airport. Enjoy. Thank you, Teddy. Show's over. Thanks for watching. Thanks to the team behind the scenes. Please sign up for Means TV if you haven't yet, and subscribe to our YouTube and podcast channels. One day capitalism will fall. Until then, we'll be right here. See you next week.